For millennia, humans have tried to protect themselves from enemy blades, from simple leather vests to full suits of knightly armor. But which armor was the most effective in all of history? Who was practically invincible on the battlefield? And why could one type of armor save a life, while another become a death sentence? We can't answer the question of armor effectiveness without clear evaluation criteria. Their effectiveness depends on several factors: level of protection, versatility, cost, and technological accessibility. It's also important to consider how long the armor remained relevant and in demand on the battlefield. Armor that offers perfect protection against arrows might be useless against firearms. We will examine only those types of armor that were actually used in battle, not experimental prototypes. We'll analyze armor from different regions and historical periods from antiquity to the early modern era. It's also crucial to consider how widespread the armor was. Elite equipment cannot be considered effective in a broader sense. We will divide the armor into historical periods: antiquity, the Middle Ages, the late Middle Ages, and the era of firearms. In each period, we will highlight the most outstanding examples and compare them. In the end, we will determine which of them can be considered the most effective based on a combination of factors. Now let's move on to the first era, antiquity. Lorica segmentata, the famous segmented armor of Roman legionaries from the 1st-2nd centuries. It consisted of iron plates connected with straps and rivets. This armor protected the chest, shoulders, and back while leaving the arms mobile. It was lighter and more advanced than bronze cuirasses or mail of its time. A legionary in this armor retained maneuverability and could fight effectively both in close combat and formation. Its modular design made it relatively easy to repair even in the field. Lorica segmentata provided excellent protection against slashing and stabbing weapons. However, it was vulnerable to heavy blunt strikes, such as from Celtic axes. Also, it offered limited protection for the lower body. Nevertheless, at the time of its use, it gave the Romans a protective advantage over barbarian tribes. Producing such armor required advanced metallurgy and infrastructure. It was made centrally and in large numbers for the imperial army. Its design allowed the legionary to carry a pilum, gladius, and shield without losing functionality. Within the Roman military doctrine, it struck an optimal balance between protection and mobility. Lorica segmentata was used for about 200 years. Later, it was replaced by the simpler and cheaper lorica hamata, chainmail. This was due not to combat shortcomings, but to the economic and logistical crisis of the late empire. Thus, lorica segmentata remains one of the most advanced armors of antiquity. But due to its production complexity, it never became a universal solution. It gets 6 points for protection, 7 for versatility, 5 for accessibility, and an overall score of 6. Let's move on to the next era, the Middle Ages. Chainmail became the main type of protection in the early Middle Ages and remained in use for centuries. The hauberk, a long mail shirt with sleeves and sometimes a hood, was widely used by the Normans. It was made from thousands of interlinked metal rings, all connected by hand. Its strength was in universal protection against slashing attacks. It was flexible, didn't restrict movement, and suited both cavalry and infantry. The hauberk allowed a fighter to move freely, even during long marches or sieges. Its weight was evenly distributed over the body, reducing fatigue. The ring structure made it hard for a sword or knife to pierce through. However, it was less effective against strong piercing attacks, like those from spears. It also performed well against arrows, especially from a distance. It could be worn with padding, a gambeson, or in multiple layers. The hauberk was cheaper and easier to produce than plate armor. It could be made in field workshops, and repairs took little time. Chainmail was used throughout Europe from England to Byzantium. It was versatile and remained in use up to the 14th century. The rise of crossbows and powerful longbows gradually reduced its advantages. It also didn't offer enough protection against blunt weapons like maces, flails, and axes. Nevertheless, the hauberk remained a mass-produced armor for about 500 years. Its durability, versatility, and ease of maintenance make it one of the most effective in history. Eventually, during the height of the knightly era, it was replaced by plate armor. Let's sum it up. Chainmail gets 7 points for protection, 7 for versatility, 6 for accessibility, and an overall score of 7. Not bad, but we move on. By the 15th century, Gothic plate armor appeared in the Holy Roman Empire. It was made of full steel plates covering the entire body from helmet to feet. This armor provided maximum protection from melee weapons and most arrows. The plates were anatomically shaped to deflect blows and arrows. Despite full coverage, the joints allowed the wearer to run, climb, and fight on horseback. The weight was 25-30 kilograms, but it was well distributed across the body. Underneath, knights wore padded clothing that absorbed impacts. Gothic armor could even stop crossbow bolts from a distance. German and Italian smiths reached the highest quality in metal treatment and heat tempering. The armor was often custom-made to match the exact measurements of its owner. Protection for the neck, elbows, and knees came from articulated parts. Even the fingers were covered by metal gauntlets. Despite its complexity, an experienced knight could put it on without assistance. Its only downside was the high cost and need for regular care. But the armor was nearly useless against early firearms like muskets and arquebus. Its era ended in the early 16th century with the spread of gunpowder weapons. Still, at its peak, it made a warrior nearly invulnerable on the battlefield. Gothic plate armor represents the height of armor making before the age of gunpowder. It symbolized the upper class while also giving a real combat advantage. In terms of protection and mobility, it was the most advanced armor of the pre-industrial world. But can it beat chainmail? Let's count. Plate armor gets 10 points for protection, 9 for versatility, and 4 for accessibility. Total score 8. Alright, time to move into the modern era. With the rise of firearms, armor lost its former significance. However, heavy cavalry cuirassiers continued using armor until the 19th century. The main piece was the cuirassier armor, a steel breastplate and helmet. The cuirass protected the chest and back from sabers and shrapnel. It was made from 3.5mm thick steel, often lacquered to resist rust. The armor weighed around 8-10 kilograms, ideal for a horseman. French cuirassiers of the Napoleonic era wore it in major battles, including Waterloo. It didn't protect the limbs, but the breastplate could block most melee weapons. Sometimes, it even stopped bullets from a distance. Pistols of that era didn't always penetrate the cuirass from 30-50 meters. The crested helmet protected the head from overhead blows. Because of its light weight, the armor didn't hinder cavalry movements. It was cheaper and simpler to produce than medieval plate armor. French, Prussian, Russian, and Austrian armies all used similar sets. The armor gave cavalry durability and a psychological edge on the battlefield. But against rifled muskets or mini bullets, it became ineffective. Still, in close combat, it offered considerable survivability. The cuirassier set was the last real combat armor of a regular army. After the 1870s, it remained only as a ceremonial uniform element. Its effectiveness was high within the limited context of cavalry usage. This armor gets 5 points for protection, 6 for versatility, and 7 for accessibility. Final score 6. Well, the time has come to choose today's winner. We must consider the best balance of protection, versatility, and accessibility. By these criteria, the most balanced choice was the Gothic plate armor of the 15th century. It offered near-complete body protection, allowed freedom of movement, was used by elite forces, and set the standard for an entire era. Despite its high cost, it reached the peak of effectiveness, the result of 1,000 years of armor evolution, and, for a short time, made a human being nearly invincible. And that's all for now. Share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.